Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly Tuesdays at 2. My name is Todd Greer. I'm the Executive Director of Center Vision Leadership Foundation, and we are thrilled that you're here with us today for our weekly hangout. We're very excited today. We have a special guest joining us, Dr. Kathleen Patterson. Dr. Patterson is very special to me, and I'm going to share probably my own personal connection before I go any deeper into her awesome bio. Dr. Patterson was actually on my dissertation committee at Regent University and is very, very close to me, somebody I very highly value, and so I'm excited to have her with us today. Dr. Patterson is a professor in the School of Business and Leadership at Regent University. She is the director of the doctoral program in strategic leadership. She also has been a key leadership expert in an important field that has emerged over the last 30 years called servant leadership. And obviously she's not that old, but she has been at the forefront of this leadership journey, and she has started and been part of the servant leadership roundtables at Regent University. So we're really excited to have Dr. Patterson with us today. Kathleen, thank you for joining us, and we really just appreciate you making time out of your busy academic schedule to be with us here.
I am privileged to be with everybody today, especially because people are interested in servant leadership. So very exciting, and also for the record, Dr. Greer was a wonderful student. So, and now a colleague.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Now it's such an excitement to be able to engage in these kinds of discussions, and really for people who don't know anything about servant leadership, would you give us just kind of a primer? What is servant leadership and where did it start?
Well, some people believe that it's as old as time. Academically, we can begin servant leadership with Robert K. Greenleaf. And he was wonderful in the fact that he was an executive with AT&T. And he began doing a lot of reading, and one of his books that he was reading was Journey to the East. And that really influenced his thinking, and Robert K. Greenleaf is credited with starting the terminology servant leadership. And he was very adamant that it was about you as a leader being the servant first. So you are servant first and then leader. And that's pretty much the textbook definition of servant leadership. One of the key distinctions to understand, and even a practical perspective, is that you as the leader are focused on your followers. That is your main concern, your primary objective, and everything else flows from that focus on your followers.
And that's a really interesting concept, because when we think about leadership, the idea that leaders would focus on followers, I think to many people seems very contrary, right?
It is completely contrary. I had a discussion with someone today in a consulting role, and in his organization, the management team is focused on the profits, 100% on the profits, and they want their followers, their employees, to serve that profit margin. And we had a wonderful discussion about how if you switch that around and serve your followers first, actually, this incredible thing begins to happen. They will take care of the things that need to be done. They will take care of the profits. If you as the leader are so into your followers, you're serving them, you're cheering them on, you're encouraging them, this amazing thing happens. They are robust, they're vibrant, they're excited about their jobs, they're excited about their roles. A wonderful example of this is Truett Cathy of Chick-fil-A, who recently passed away. And he is very well known for stating principles and people before profits. And I think we would all agree that he was incredibly successful, but he's very adamant that it was principles and people, principles and people. And when he talks about principles, he's actually, and he's very clear about this, talking about biblical principles. He said that the Bible was a restaurant manual. So your Bible, and I tell people this all the time, your Bible is your ultimate leadership textbook. It is all there.
Yeah, that's such an interesting concept, and it's funny that you go to Truett Cathy, and obviously that's somebody who has been a major promoter in the Chick-fil-A organization as a whole. I was just thinking as you were talking, I just recently read Mark Miller and Ken Blanchard's book, The Secret. They just relaunched the book in their 10th anniversary edition, and they really talk about that idea of serving first. And I think it's such an interesting thing. And you pointed out very well that when we look to serve our followers, in many ways we're freeing them up.
Yeah. And you know what? There is something powerful. I don't know everyone's experience. I can speak from my own experience. I have worked for people who were, I hate to use the word persecutive, but they were. They were concerned about using me to get the job done. Very ineffective. That didn't make me feel good about my job, about myself, about the organization, about the company, nothing. It's very deflating to treat people that way. If you know you're being used just to advance someone else's agenda, not so much fun. However, I have also had the great privilege of working for people who believed in me, sought my advancement, promoted me, helped me, guarded over me, covered over me in a fierce way, and truly had my best interest at heart. And you may say, well, you can't really do that with everybody. You've got to be focused on the organization and all that. But there is something incredible about when someone takes the time to invest in you as a person. You flourish. And if all of your people in your organization are flourishing, by default, your organization is growing, flourishing. You're releasing innovation, creativity, all these kinds of things that we as leaders desire for what's going on in our companies. So our churches, our ministries, everything.
Absolutely, and that's such an interesting thing. I think one of the things that attracts me to the idea of servant leadership and also attracted me to humility as a research area is the idea about knowing the other people that surround you. And I think servant leadership, it really digs into that, because how can we grow our organizations? How can we grow them if we don't know the people and know where their strengths lie and know how to empower them to use those talents and abilities? And I don't hold, and obviously we have somewhat differing opinions, and you've spent a lot of time on servant leadership and I haven't. But there's more and more leadership theories that are beginning to comprehend the importance of followers. And I think servant leadership really paved the way for that.
I believe that it did. Todd, when you kind of look at a lot of the leadership literature, whether it's the academic literature or even the popular press literature, even though maybe people don't understand why it works, there is this respect that something is going on and it is working. It's pretty incredible. Something that you said just a moment ago kind of reminded me of the concept of when you were talking about humility, about abandoning your self-interest, not putting yourself at the center of everything. Philippians 2, says to not look out for your own interest, but for the interest of others. And I'll just tell you a quick little story. My youngest son, when he was a teenager, played the drums in a church, and he had worked so hard to maintain and earn that position. And he came home one night and said, "Oh, I'm sharing the drums nights with someone else." And I'm like, "Oh, how can you do that? You earned that. You worked so hard for it." And he simply said, "Mom, I am not looking out for my own interest, but for the interest of others." So, how do you respond to that? But here's what is so incredible. When Logan, and that is his name, when Logan did that, he opened up a whole new world, not only for this drummer that he was sharing with, but for himself. And I cannot even explain to you, but in God's economy, when you are looking out for the interest of others, guess who's taking care of your interests? God is. And that's pretty phenomenal. If we leave everything up to Him, He's got it under control, and He is watching out for us. So,
absolutely. And just for anybody that's joining us right now, just want to let you know we are here with Dr. Kathleen Patterson. We are talking about servant leadership. This is an exciting discussion. It's something that really piques the interest of a lot of people because of how contrary it seems to be by nature, but also because of how empowering it is. And so that's an exciting piece that we're in. Kathleen, how did you end up reaching into the servant leadership realm?
That's so interesting. I know that we all have very different journeys, how we arrive to where we're at, but I arrived as a student here at Regent University when I was doing my master's, and the professors were talking about servant leadership. And when they began to explain the concepts and explain how it worked, I just remember sitting in class going, wow, that's what it's called. I was so excited because I had experienced it in my business life for years. And then all of a sudden I was face to face with what it actually was called. So I knew it from a heart perspective, so it was wonderful to find out about it from an academic and even a popular press perspective. So yeah, and I just as a student began to research this idea and talk to a lot of people, and just the whole concept began to grow on me. You know, from Matthew 23, that perspective. And you know, we are called to serve, and that's very powerful. And I think sometimes we get so interested in the idea of called to lead, and we want to be a leader, and we want to be in those important positions, and we want to have those privileges that come with that. But really, the greatest privilege that we can have as a leader is to serve our followers, build them up, create in them the desire to move ahead, and create in them also this desire to serve other people themselves. So there's something exponential that happens when we begin to serve people, lead them by serving them. I find it fascinating. So
absolutely, and that's a great point of background here. We at CenterVision Leadership Foundation, we work extensively with religious organizations, with nonprofits, and with educational institutions. And we were talking before we went on air about the reality that a lot of times leaders in these organizations are very passionate. They're very passionate about the cause. They're very passionate about the organization, about the mission and the values and the principles. And a lot of times it's a hard thing for them to release some of that control and give it to others. What would you say to the leader that's struggling with these kinds of issues in this realm?
You have to kind of look at the role of leading. Most of us are in leadership roles are pretty savvy people, very passionate people, especially if you are a founder of an organization or you are leading an organization, if it's something, initiatives that you've developed. We become so intense about what's going on in the organization, and we become very passionate by default. But really one of the best things that we can do is to not hold or hoard that passion and intensity just for ourselves, but to really share that with everybody else. Because you know what? It is not about us. It is absolutely not about us. And if we want to accomplish great things in the world, wonderful things that will really transform the lives of other people, transform societies, transform people for the cause of Christ, these kinds of things, we have got to share that power with our followers. We have to build them up, make sure they're ready, empower them, train them, teach them, really let go of that control. And it is so easy when you are an intense, passionate leader, if it's something that you have started, it is really tough to let that go. But if you want the cause, whatever cause that is, to flourish and grow and become robust in so many ways, you've got to let that power go. And who better to give it to than the amazing people that you have in your care? So, but yeah, that's very interesting to think about. That passion can be very intense.
I think what it also leads me to as a follow-up is to the questions of what kind of trust is being developed in organizations, and also how are we emphasizing the role of training? Because obviously we're afraid to empower unless we have developed trust and unless we're truly doing a good job of training. And so might it be that we're really asking a larger question than just you know, of relinquishing or a fear of relinquishing? Is it a, you know, have you come across that in your work both as professor and consultant?
Absolutely, and that is one, and you actually said the key word, fear. And a lot of leaders, we're just a little bit afraid if we relinquish that power and we begin to trust everybody that we're going to lose control of the situation, or maybe someone's going to take our position or something like that. And leaders do fear that. They fear if I create you to be awesome and amazing, well then what's left for me? Servant leaders are incredibly interesting in the fact that they really don't care. They want their followers to be powerful. They want their followers to be wonderful, amazing people doing wonderful and great things. Matter of fact, there's a concept of vision where servant leaders are visionary for their followers. They truly want to dream big dreams for their people. So, and again, this all comes back to that follower-focused approach. And servant leaders are constantly focused on their followers, and they are serving them in great ways for their great potential and their great future. Here's the interesting thing about fear. If you as a leader, you think someone might take advantage of you or something like that, will that happen? Yeah, sometimes absolutely it will. But let me assure you that journey is worth the risk, because what can happen in your department, in your organization, in your team is so much more incredible than that little bitty risk. Things are going to happen. They're going to happen whether you do it or not. So, but it really is worth the risk. So
absolutely, it brings up an interesting idea. And you were talking about the importance of leading other people and where that goes as a leader. The sense that sometimes we're afraid that we're no longer going to be needed or relevant or whatever it is if we're busy training up other people. And I think we're starting to see that more and more in the struggles that we have in regard to succession planning. And I've never really thought about servant leadership as a correlative to succession planning, but might it be that we're struggling with this internal succession oftentimes because we're busy holding on to things?
Yeah, and we're hoarding it for ourselves. Succession planning is huge with the fact that it's based in fear. And you will find that a lot of leaders do not have a succession plan. They do not have an exit strategy for themselves, and they certainly have no replacement. They're not interested in having a succession plan because they don't want to leave. And the reality is if you are a leader, you need an exit strategy, you need a succession plan. What I've seen happen sometimes, and this is just horrible when it happens, if a leader has an unexpected leaving of the company and they developed no one, they had no plan, no strategy, the very passions and intensity that you are fighting for that company, that organization, that church, that ministry, whatever it is, falls by the wayside.
Yeah.
But one of the amazing things that can happen is when you are building your people, when you are planning your own exit strategy, when you are planning and grooming other people to come in and take over for you, those people are incredibly competent. They're incredibly wonderful at what they do. And again, I think we just see over and over again leaders who kind of abandon that fear and really develop their people. Just fascinating things begin to happen in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an exciting issue, and I think there's so many pieces in the succession planning that you were just mentioning there that we see. We see them constantly. And a lot of times organizations are left spending a lot of money because these things have not been prepared for, and because when an individual who's a leader leaves, so much of what we call the organizational narrative is gone with them. The fabric of what the organization stands for, the dream values, oftentimes is held within that leader and not shared. So that's an interesting perspective, because if leaders are serving their followers, they're sharing with them the fabric of who the organization is, would you say?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And here's what is kind of interesting about that. When you hold something so tightly, it will slip through your fingers. We just can't do that as leaders. We really need to have open hands and sharing all that we are and developing our people. Let that fear go. Develop your people. I promise you, it becomes a journey so worth it. It really is worth it.
We're going to go a little research geek moment here, okay? And sorry, that appeals to me, and I know that there are people that are going to be viewing this video or on with us right now who they want to know data. What kind of studies have we seen in showing the impact and the force and the importance of servant leadership? Could you tell us just a little bit about, to Quant, but fill us with a little bit of knowledge there.
I find that side fascinating as well. And here's what is incredibly interesting to me as an academic, is that research has confirmed what we already know. People want to be cared for. People want to be loved. People appreciate when their leaders walk in humility. And it's so interesting to me when the academic world resonates these kinds of principles.
Yeah.
Here's a more fascinating element to that, is that studies that have been done literally all over the world confirm, independent of culture, that servant leadership works. I just finished sitting on a dissertation where someone was looking at, Brian Carroll, was looking at information in India and about servant leadership in the tech industry. Confirmed yet again, people want their leaders to serve them. And when you think about it, it really makes sense. When you pay attention to your followers, when you care for your followers, you're growing and blooming them. And that is a concept that is so independent of your age, where you live, and we're seeing cultural validation of servant leadership theory all over the world. In Asia, in Africa, Australia, Europe, study after study after study is confirming these servant leadership principles. So I still haven't figured out how we're getting to Antarctica, but one day we'll figure that one out. So.
Absolutely. See, and that's so interesting to me, because I think what you said is such an important thing. It's great when we can recognize what we inherently know is being validated by research, because as you talk about servant leadership, in the idea of followers, the idea of empowering them, the idea of setting a vision and helping them connect to that, what individual doesn't want to be in an organization in which they see those things enacted?
Right. You do not see people, employees, followers say, oh, please sign me up for that horrible leader, I'll take that. That just doesn't happen. We see people really standing in line at the door to work for leaders who care about them, who do the right things. One of the interesting things too about servant leadership is it is so connected with the virtues, with values, with ethical leadership. I don't know about you, but I am so tired and overdone of corruption, scandal, leaders falling in disgrace, jail time, prison time, leaving the ministry, all these kinds of things. We need people. We need leaders. The world is crying out for leaders. Followers are crying out for leaders who will do the right things, who will love their followers, who will abandon their own self-interest for the sake of other people. These are principles that are timeless. These are principles that are culturally not constrained. We need these leaders absolutely all over the world.
That's such an interesting thing, the sense of having that value-based backbone to an organization. I think that's such a huge thing, and I'm going to share with you, you referenced Robert Greenleaf earlier. Greenleaf was really the early proponent of servant leadership, and at least from the framework there. In the intro, the foreword to the 25th anniversary issue, Stephen Covey said something that I think is really interesting, and I think this pertains to nonprofits and religious institutions and organizations really of all stripes.
Sure.
He said this, he said, there has to be something at the soul of an organization that does not change but will enable people to live with change. This unchanging core is natural principles. When I read that, it was one of those things that, the highlighter comes out right away, because I think we recognize we're in a time of constant whitewater. Okay, we're in constant whitewater. We feel like everything about us is tumultuous and it's changing, it's new and it's different. And you know, you brought up some key issues where we see leaders fall from grace, so to speak. We see issues where constant change is happening, not only in an internal perspective in our organizations, but also with external factors, some kind of core anchor to hold us there. And servant leadership seems to be one of those pieces. When you think about change, when you think about what about servant leadership do you feel gives it that core that allows people to be able to weather storms?
You know, I think it's just that servant leadership is so consistent with human dignity, obviously so consistent with biblical principles. And, you know, if we're looking for truth in the world, if we're looking for the things that work in the world, the Bible is going to be the ultimate, you know, a place where we can find these answers. And let's be incredibly honest here. Life is tough.
Yes.
Work, careers, all of these things, organizational life, it's pretty tough stuff. We are striving together. You know, most people work 20, 30, 40, 60 some hours a week. That's a lot of hours for us to invest into something. It ought to be a fun environment. It ought to be a fulfilling, rewarding environment. And we as leaders, and what are we creating for our followers? You know, do they come to work and, oh, humdrum, I just can't take another day. We do not want our followers to experience and live that. We don't want to live that. Sure. We want to have fulfilling work environments, enriching work environments, where great things can happen, fun things can happen, where we're all in this together. Bruce Winston, in his book, Be a Leader for God's Sake, said something in there that really has stuck with me for many, many years. He said, we've got, as leaders, we have got to move beyond seeing our employees as hired hands. We've got to see them as hired hearts. And when you realize that you have a total person working for you, working with you, it is so much easier to engage with that person. Troy Cathy said something that I found kind of interesting. He said, how do you know if someone needs to be encouraged? They're breathing. It really is just human nature. Sure. We as a people desire to be encouraged. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. And it all really boils down to human dignity. So, and as leaders, we have got to give that to our followers. And if we're serving them with greatness, appreciating all that they are, they're going to appreciate that too. So.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about servant leadership. We've been giving the audience a lot to chew on. The person that's sitting there right now, we're 28 minutes into a conversation about servant leadership. They're excited. They're interested. Where do they go from here? What would you encourage from a research or reading, an investigation standpoint? What would you suggest to them?
Well, it just depends on who the person is. If you like kind of the academic side of the world, you might want to Google Regent University Servant Leadership Research Roundtables. There's tons of information available there to begin a journey. The Greenleaf Center is a great place to start. The Spear Center for Servant Leadership, Larry Spears, has some wonderful information on his website. But I'm going to take us back again to the Bible.
Yeah.
If you really want to be a servant, you've got to invest who you are as a leader in the Word of God. And I've said for years, and I think this is incredibly important, leadership starts in prayer. If you are praying for your followers, you can't help but love them. And if you're loving your followers, you're going to do the right things for them.
Yeah. And I think we see the importance of connection there. When we can find ourselves empathizing with them because we're seeking to understand them as human beings, it certainly does provide something that's greater. And I think there's just so much that's here for people. We can look at and we can see a very deep academic perspective, and for people whose minds really want to go to there's a lot that's there for them. What about for somebody who says, you know, give me something that's very practical. Give me something that's very very usable, very consumable for me as an individual. Maybe I'm a business leader or a nonprofit leader. I don't have a lot of time. Where could I turn in that regard?
Sure. I think one of the most simplistic things that you can do as a leader is to see everybody that you come in contact with, everybody that works for you, view them as wearing a sign that says, I want to be loved. You can start right there. You will be on the journey. I think it's very interesting if we look at the 10 Commandments in the Old Testament and how Jesus in the New Testament deduced everything into two very simple principles. Love God and love others. So that really truly is servant leadership. And I will tell you, if I am so in love with God, I will not be able to help myself but to completely love other people. And if we really walk around seeing our followers as people who want to be, that changes everything, absolutely everything. And let me just make the distinction here really quick. We can lead with fear. It is so easy and it is so effective. I tell you what to do, you better do it or else. That is very effective because most people want to keep their jobs. So, but boy, that is a dead way to live, a dead way to lead, and no one's going to enjoy that. And your followers are going to be looking for the back door. You really want to change the scope of your leadership. Again, just see these people as wearing a sign that says, I want to be loved. Yeah. Love changes everything. It's a powerful concept. And I know people go, oh, that's the soft side of leadership, that mushy-gushy stuff. Peace and love. No, it is not that. It is you being a leader, taking that stand to do the right things. You love your followers because, number one, Christ loved you. And I keep quoting Troy Cathy because that's on my brain right now. But he said if you look at your followers as being made in the image of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, wow, it completely changes. It changes the game for everybody, for you as a leader and for your followers.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think people hear that term love, and even you brought up peace and that soft side, so to speak, to leadership. And yet I think when we really get into the idea of love and when we truly value not only our people, but the organization, the collection of people as they come together, then we're willing to do some things that are hard, but are part of love. It means making some tough decisions, but it also means investing in ways that are not always comfortable for us. And I think that's something that oftentimes sticks out, that people miss that aspect, is that leadership and love, leadership and service, it's not an easy way out. In fact, harder way out, because it really goes deeper than we tend to want to go.
Absolutely. And Todd, here's where it gets so interesting to me. It is not easy to love other people. I can guarantee you have people that work for you, they're just not that lovable. And it is really a difficult thing to completely love all of your followers.
Yeah.
Some of them are out to get your job. Some of them are talking about you behind your back. Some of them are misusing company funds. Some of them are doing all kinds of things. You fill in the blank. But you know what? We better love them anyway. And let's talk a little bit about tough love. Sometimes love's going to be tough. I remember years ago, having to fire someone. And, I look back and I've had people say, oh, well, when you fire someone, is that the loving thing to do? Yes, sometimes absolutely it is. I helped someone out of a job that they despised. They were basically involved in sabotage within the organization. And I had worked with this person for some time, really trying to salvage their job, salvage their position in the company. And in the end, I had to say, hey, listen, your time with our company is over. But it was a love-based decision. And this person knew I had walked a tough road with them, really invested myself into who they were, tried to save them, tried to salvage them, and ultimately did let the person go. Here's what's fascinating. A few months later, this person came back to visit me and thanked me for firing them. They had been unable to do that for themselves. They wanted to leave the company so desperately, but really had become so stuck into what they were doing. So, But love can be tough. It is not a doormat position to be a servant leader. It is, I call servant leadership for the brave. Yeah. It's not easy. It is so difficult sometimes to love other people. Fear-based leadership is completely easy. Love-based leadership, servant-based leadership, put your shoes on. It is for the brave.
Absolutely. We are so thrilled. It's 2:35 there at East Coast time. It's been such a pleasure to be with Dr. Kathleen Patterson talking about servant leadership. It's one of those places that there's so much to learn from and so much to grow. We've been able to whet your appetite, hopefully, here in our time together and talking about servant leadership. I want to encourage you real quick, if you have not yet checked out the magazine, nonprofitperformance.org. Issue number 1 was published earlier this month, and there's actually an article we were discussing off air prior to this, The Irony of Leadership by Cal Turner, and Cal talks about the importance of leaders understanding that they're following the needs of their leaders, they're following the values of the organization, and they're following their personal values. And so it's an important thing for us to understand that leaders do follow. It's not, you don't just go following anything, but you have a certain perspective and you have those things laid out and you're able to follow. Also want to remind you, every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, we have our nonprofit chat. If you're on Twitter, the easy place, go to twubs.com/nonprofit chat. Or if you're just on Twitter, you can look for that hashtag nonprofit chat. This is part of who we are as we go through everything with Center Vision Leadership Foundation. Always want to encourage you as well, if you have any questions, if you have comments, if you want to find out about how you can be involved and what we're doing to try to impact communities as these communities impact the world, feel free to email us, info@centervisionleadership.org. We'll be quick in getting back with you. We'd love to have you engage with us as we try to move things forward. Again, so excited to have with us Dr. Kathleen Patterson. Kathleen, thank you for your time. Appreciate all that you bring to the table. You're obviously passionate about that, and that's something that's so exciting for leaders outside in other organizations to see the passion that you have in personal experience and working closely with servant leadership. What would you like to leave with our audience? One last thing.
Hey, the greatest among you will be the servant. If you truly desire to be a great leader, wash that away. Begin with serving other people. And it's been a privilege to be here, Todd. Thank you.
Absolutely. So glad again that you're with us. I'm Todd Greer, Executive Director of Center Vision Leadership Foundation, and we are thrilled that you have been able to enjoy us for our Tuesday at 2 Hangout. Have a great day, and we'll see you Thursday at 4 for the Nonprofit Chat. Thanks.